Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Timothy C., the lecturer from Australian College of Applied Professions. Welcome to this afternoon's presentation. And it's good to have all of you here with us this afternoon. And as we begin, I'd just like to start off with an acknowledgement of country. So I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to the elders, past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present today. I'm here in Adelaide, so I acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region. So I just want to briefly share with us what is my role here in ACAP. I am a lecturer for counseling, and I teach the masters, different masters unit in the Masters of Counseling and Psychotherapy, as well as I also coordinate the Bachelor of Counseling course. So that is what I do. But of course, on the side, one of the things I do as well outside of ACAP is I am currently the president of the Career Development Association of Singapore. Yes, I come originally am from Singapore, and I moved to Australia 7 years ago, and I've been teaching here at ACAP and still doing the career development work in Singapore and across Asia as well. So now I'm going to share screen to start this talk this afternoon about the how do we prepare ourselves for our dream career. So let me just go ahead and share the screen. So I may disappear from the screen, but I think what's more important is to see what I'm presenting. So I'm just going to share the screen right now. Okay, so yes, the screen is on. So right now, what you're seeing on the screen is a very quick the screen of what I do. So let me just prepare. Let me just move the screen away. Okay, great. No. Let me just begin by sharing that. Now, the idea of the talk for today is how do we get prepared for our dream career? Now, I think this is a topic which is something very close to a lot of people's heart. And especially if you are listening to this talk, you probably are thinking, with the 2022 coming around, and that we have read and heard about the great resignation. And there's been a lot of talk about people feeling burnt out from the work because of COVID, working from home or traveling and all these different things that's out there. Some of you out there may be thinking, if I wanted to ensure that I find myself in the right career, what are some things I should do? Now, how do I start thinking about that? How do I start to prepare for this right career thing? Now, as we begin, I think the very first thing I need to clarify for all of us is this. What is a career? Now, isn't a job and career the same thing? Because usually when we talk about career, some of us may be thinking about that job that we're doing right now. But for others, the term career could mean something else. So I think before I even talk about how do we think and dream of that career that we want to go into, it's important that we clarify some of these terminologies so that we're all on the right page. So now, a job. Now, what is a job? A job basically is a paid role that we are tasked to do. So in the company that you are, whichever company that you're in, you are paid by the company to perform certain tasks and to complete certain work for the company. So this is what we call a job, which is a paid role. Now, when it comes to a career, it's slightly different. A career, our definition is this, that it is actually a long-term endeavor where we're looking at something that we are building over time. And the roles that will take place across a career can be both paid roles as well as unpaid roles. And very often, when we talk about careers, people always think and mistake that a career is like a job. Well, it's actually the other way around, that a job, the paid role, is a part of that career. But your career consists of the different things that you do that gives you meaning, that gives you a sense of fulfillment, which a paid job could be one of those items that gives you a sense of fulfillment. So I'll give you a very quick example. Now, just talk about myself. I am a staff of ACAP. So I'm paid to be doing lecturing. I'm paid to do a bit of research around counseling. I'm paid to guide students. I'm paid to do the stuff that we do here. But in an unpaid roles that I do, number one, I'm a husband. Number two, I'm a father of two adult children. Number three, I volunteer as the president of the Career Association in Singapore. Number four, I'm also involved in doing a little bit of a volunteer psychotherapy work around here in Adelaide. So if you notice, out of the things I've just mentioned, only one item is where I'm paid, which is my role at ACAP. I'm paid to do that. But outside of that paid role, I am involved in various things that I do which I don't have a pay for. I mean, no one pays me for that, but I gladly do that because it is my interest. It gives me a sense of satisfaction, and that gives me a way to continually reach people and help people. So, if you look at this whole definition I've just talked about, this is that in order for us to know what our career is, we need first to know, go back further, the next slide I'll share with us, that we first need to know what is it that gives us a sense of meaning, what is it that gives us a sense of purpose, and what is it that gives us a sense of fulfillment. So I know right now, based on what I just shared with you, that this job here that I'm doing in ACAP gives me a great sense of fulfillment. I am being paid to do the things that I'm doing right now. But outside of ACAP, I'm also volunteering my time to be leading the association, to be providing psychotherapy work on a voluntary basis to individuals around, to certain organizations. But I'm also a husband. I'm happy. I'm a husband. I'm also happy to be the father of my two adult children. Now, all these gives me clarity. And so right now, if you ask me, so Tim, what is your career? I would say that my career is where I am involved in helping people. My career involves me enabling people to arrive at their greatest potential. So it's sort of like a mission statement that I have for myself, which was created out of a realization many years ago. What is it that I want to do for the rest of my life? So if I look at that mission statement, if you have a mission statement, then this mission statement likelihood is the target or the goal of your career. So going back to the question of how do we choose a dream career, then we have to go back to the point of what is it that gives us a sense of meaning? How do we know what is our mission statement? So in order for us to figure out what we want to do long-term wise that gives us a sense of meaning, which includes a paid role, then I would say that there are all these steps that we have to consider before we know how to choose that dream career. Of course, this particular screen here is a little bit small, so I'm just go a little bit, I'll go closer to it. According to this definition, of course, the source is from thebalancedcareers.com. So now there are, according to them, 6 steps. So there is number 1, in order to know how to choose a career or dream career, we need to first assess ourselves. So assessing ourselves simply means what is it that gives us a sense of meaning? What is it that drives us? Which I'll talk about in a short while. But after we have assessed ourselves, we then need to maybe make a list of occupations. That means in this case, the maybe roles which are paid, as well as roles which are unpaid. Because these two things, these two elements, both paid and unpaid, gives us that sense of meaning and the fulfillment that is derived from the results of assessment of ourselves. And the third thing we need to do is perhaps if you are unsure about that role, whether it's a paid role or unpaid role, perhaps we want to conduct some information interviews, meaning to say, maybe reach out to individuals on LinkedIn that you know who is in the space and maybe ask them, maybe linked up with them and to ask, is it all right if I were to sort of conduct a information interview with you to understand what is it that you're doing right now that gives you a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose? And usually in this kind of approach, because you're wanting to know more about that role, individuals will tend to be more open to that because firstly, you're not asking them for money, right? You're not asking them to buy anything and you're not asking them for a job. So in this case, it's more of learning about that role. And I'm sure people on LinkedIn, when you are connected to them, will be more than glad to give you all that information. especially when they know that it is not about, having them, that you're not selling them anything and stuff like that. Once you've done an information interview, once you've looked at your assessments, once you sort of have a list of what you want to be exploring, then you begin to explore and make that career choice. Now, of course, identify what is the goal, short term, long term, and finally, you write a career action plan. Now, of course, on paper, on screen, it looks kind of straightforward. But of course, interestingly, for any one of you who's thinking of exploring your career, moving in 2022 to new directions, it is very ideal for you, as far as possible, to have a conversation with a career coach or a career counselor, because these individuals are trained and they will then be able to work with alongside with you to explore and to help you to look at all these opportunities and to really have an understanding of what is it that will give you a sense of fulfillment and purpose. But I want to go back to the first point, which is this point over here: assess yourself. To me, that is the very first step, which I'm going to share with all of you what we need to do as a first step to choosing that dream career. So to me, the very first step of choosing the dream career involves knowing your VIPS. Now, what is VIPS? Well, am I a very important person? Yes, you are the very important person. But this VIPS is another way of looking at what we call your career attributes. Now, what is this whole thing about career attributes? Career attributes basically are attributes or functions or factors or elements of influence within us that works together to give us a sense of purpose, that works together to give us a sense of meaning. So there are 4 parts to what I call a career attribute. VIPS, V for our values, I for our interests, P for our personality, and S for our skills. So VIPS. So the first step to learning or being able to choose a career for ourselves is to understand what our VIPS is or are. And once we know what our VIPS is or are, it becomes very clear because we know these are the things which drives us. And when we choose that particular role, whether it's paid or unpaid, we know there is an alignment. And when there is an alignment, you know that you are on the right track. So, of course, some of you may be asking, all right, Tim, so I get it, VIPS. Tell me more. What do I need to do? How do I find out about VIPS? Okay, so let me just share with us very quickly different components of VIPS so that at the end of this talk, you will have lots of clarity around how do you take the next step forward. So values are things which motivate us, it drives us. These are things which are very important for us, and it gives us purpose in the job that we do, as well as it gives us purpose in the things that we do in our life outside of our job, which is outside of the paid role. So once we know what are those motivators, what are those values that drives you, you will naturally bring yourself or steer yourself to certain roles that will be aligned to those values. On the next screen, I'm going to share some examples. Like imagine if you're a counselor or you're thinking of going to do the work of counselors that I want to do, then of course, naturally, individuals who are in the space, who are counselors and psychotherapists, and who have been in the space for a long time and they're really enjoying what they do, if you have interviewed with them, chances are you'll find some of these values coming up to the front. For example, these counselors or psychotherapists, one of the values probably that's important to them is like helping others or having a sense of moral fulfillment, even the importance of human dignity. So of course, there are many different values out there. But if you talk to these individuals who are really enjoying their work, chances are these values are there because it's very aligned to the nature of the work. Or if you talk to a social worker, similar space, you'll find that chances are if these social workers are really enjoying their work, then chances are you'll find the values such as helping others, sense of helping people to gain a sense of independence, or recognizing that people need to have their own personal agency, sense of human dignity, social justice. So these are the kinds of values that will drive individuals to go into social workspace. So I'll give it another example. Now imagine if your personal value or values which are important to you is that, let's just say family, for example. Yeah. And now imagine that maybe this week or next week, your boss calls you up over the Zoom if you're working from home and all that. And the boss says, we got a new role that's coming up for our organization, and it's something very exciting, something very powerful. And if you take up this role, we'll give you 50% more pay. Also, wow, okay, that's interesting, right? Now, this is the example I'm giving to you. But imagine that right now your value, just think of it. If your value, the top value is family, thinking of that. Now, this option is provided to you. Sounds good because right now there's there isn't a lot of difficulties in terms of alignment. But now the clincher comes this. Your boss says, however, this role requires you to travel out of Australia, to go to a far off land on the other side of our globe. And because of our current COVID situation and all that, only you can go to this place. Your family can't go with you. And yeah, you can do your Zooms and all that, but your family can't travel with you. And it's going to be a sort of like a 1 year kind of an assignment. Now, going back to your values, if your value is family and spending time with your family, together with your family, with your partners, with your children, if that is critical, chances are you think of this job role, this opportunity, yeah, it's great. But if the family members can't travel with you and you're going to be all by yourself alone in a foreign land, your values will probably speak out quite loudly, and your values that you might eventually make a decision, even though the opportunity is great, but I think I probably will give it a pass because if I take up this job, it's going to be in conflict with my values, and I won't have the opportunity in this case to be connected with my family because family is important to me. So if just looking at this example, we can see how clearly that our values sometimes determine what is it that we do. So knowing what our values to be as part of your VIPS is the very first thing we have to do. So of course, for many of you, there will be different kind of values. You will have things like independence, helping, risk-taking, variety, prestige, etc., etc. So what we're gonna do right now, I'm not sure if all of you are able to do that, but I'm just gonna show it right now. I'm going to put up a screen, and I'm going to do this particular exercise, a Slido exercise. And I'm going to invite all of us, if you can, to take up your mobile phones and to just like how we scan the QR codes, I'd like you to scan this QR code. And once you scan, it will bring you to the Slido webpage. And in the Slido webpage, you will find that there is I think a poll. Is it there? Or it's not there? Okay, just give me a while. Let me just activate this. Okay, now, yes, that's right. It's activated right now. So looking at this poll, I have put there a list of values. Of course, there are many, many values out there. But I'd like all of you listeners to sort of choose 3 values which are reflective of who you are. So I'd like all of you right now, as you're listening in, just to go ahead and simply choose any 3 values which are important to you. And automatically, once you put it there, the system will reflect. So right now, I'm just going to invite every one of you just to do that right now. So put up 3 values which are important, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so go ahead and put up that value, or put your responses. Okay, there are some movements now. Yeah, but well, I would think that I wouldn't wait too long. But anyway, this particular QR code, I'm going to leave it here so that for those of you who are watching this presentation later on, you could still go into this QR code and you can also look at this list of values and perhaps choose what you think are values which are important to you. But just looking very quickly on the screen, we can see that some of you have put up things like honesty, integrity, change and variety, family, diversity, fun, humor, more fulfillment. There are many, many different values there, right? So that this simple exercise will give us all an opportunity to be thinking about, what are some of the values that we have to be clear about for ourselves. Now, let me just go on to the next part. Now, the next part of VIPS will be in terms of interest. Now, what's interest? Now, usually when you talk to people who are thinking of jobs, thinking about the things that they do, they always say, I want to find a job that is what we call interesting. Now, the key word here is interesting. What is it that gives a person a sense of interest, or that particular thing that they do gives a sense of excitement? Now, to me, the clue to that career interest or the I part of interest is to look at what is it that you enjoy doing. Now, some of us, examples, that some of us really enjoy talking. Some of us really enjoy maybe presenting. Some of us may enjoy standing in front of a crowd and having a live audience and talking, like what I'm doing right now. Of course, this to me is something I would do, but my interest is somewhere else. But anyway, but for those of you who find that you really enjoy talking, then perhaps one of those job roles that you could consider could be like what listed as sales or lecturing, training, be a motivational speaker. Or for those of you who really enjoy doing things outdoors, maybe you're an outdoorsy type of individual, you like to be involved maybe in nature or something like that. So perhaps you could consider roles such as athlete, landscape architect, environmental scientist, etc. So the important thing is to sort of ask yourself, what is it that I really enjoy doing? And because every one of us, we are all different. So what you may enjoy may not be enjoyable to your colleague or to your partner. So it's important for us, going back to, again, the VIPS of I, to find out what is it that we really find it interesting to do. So there is this particular theory, it's called the Holland's theory, where there are 6 types of interests that people tend to be grouped into. So they are called the realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. So very quickly going through that, realistic are individuals who like to be involved in things that allows them to be very practical. They like to use their hands to be creating things. They like to be involved in practical, doing things that gives them very practical results. So these are individuals who are highly realistic. Now, for those of us who are very investigative, what happens is that we like to work with ideas, we like to work with data, we like to do a lot of analysis of information. So the kind of roles that people tend to be drawn to in investigative types are maybe like your CSI or your psychology or individuals in the space. Artistic will be individuals who are innately very creative. So you are the type of individuals that you will express yourself in the song, in music, or in a poem, in writing, in design, whatever it is, because innately you're very artistic, so you're very creative. So individuals who are highly artistic in terms of interest, they tend to find themselves being drawn to roles that gives them a chance to express their artistic creativity within them. Then for individuals who are highly social, where I am. So social simply means that you're the type of individuals who like to be engaged in working with others, with individuals, with people. And so some kind of the roles that you tend to be involved in will be like being involved in teaching, in counseling, in nursing, or any roles that allows you to interact with people, because that gives you a sense of purpose and a lot gives you also a lot of excitement when doing that. And then there are individuals who are highly enterprising. Now, those who are highly enterprising, these are the individuals where you give them a box, a box of rules. They recognize the box of rules. They know how to work within the rules, but by nature, the fact that they are enterprising, they know how to work outside of the box as well. And tendency for individuals who are highly enterprising, they tend to work outside the box because they know what are the rules within there, but they tend to bend the rules a little bit. And these are individuals who are influencers. These are individuals who are leaders. And these are individuals who are able to give a big picture kind of a goal for the whole organization. And finally, conventional, these are individuals, you give them a box of rules, they'll prefer to work within the rules. They prefer not to work outside the rules because it makes them really uncomfortable. But within the rules, this is where they thrive. For example, individuals like, for example, some professions like accounting, professions like legal profession, or even engineering profession. Now, these are professions where individuals will want to work within the rules. And I guess it's important that they have to work within the rules because it's within the rules that things will function. So then the question for all of you to consider is, number one, what are my values? Number two, which ones of the 6 areas of interest do I find myself in? And the third part now, I'm just going to go on, will be P, just in terms of personality. Now, of course, we generally will know in terms of personality that, there are some individuals who are very jovial. There are some individuals who always interact, very people-oriented. But there are also some individuals who are very task-oriented. or some individuals who are very good at planning, who are very good at data, individuals who are very good at structures. But there are some other individuals who are maybe a little bit more reserved, but they are also very people oriented. But at the same time, they are what we call very loyal, very systematic. They prefer things to remain unchanged. Now, all of us have different personality sets. Of course, there are different tools that we can use to help us to figure out our personality. But again, personality gives us a clue to the kind of things that we can do as part of our career. So imagine if your personality is such that you are an outgoing individual, and for you being outgoing, there are two types: outgoing task oriented or outgoing people oriented. So imagine if you're an outgoing people-oriented individual, that means for you, you like to be out there having conversation to people. You like to be out there having a time, just having the talking to people, building relationships, networking, and that is something which you really enjoy a lot. And that is your personality. You're naturally drawn to that. Now, that gives you again a clue to the kind of roles that you could engage in as part of a career. So going back to what I mentioned earlier, so imagine if your value is such that, I'm just throwing something out. Imagine your value is that you like challenges, number one, for example, and your interest is you are, say, for example, a enterprising individual, and your personality is you're outgoing, task-oriented. Now imagine that you like challenges, you are enterprising, you like to work outside the rules, you are outgoing, and you are task oriented. Now, can you imagine already what kind of job roles would fit you most, right? So now you know you have a certain idea of to consider roles which fit or align to your V, I, and P. And finally, let's talk about what S is. Now, S will be what we talk about, your skills. In terms of skills, there are two kinds of skill sets. One type will be what we call your technical skills. Now, these are the skills that we all learn in school, in university, or in our vet, whichever course that you learned, that you are engaged and you are taught all the technical skills to be able to function in a particular role. So, for example, if you are enrolled and you learn how to fix vehicles, right, engines and all that. Now, that is a technical skill. So that role, because you have learned that skill, the normal flow is that you then engage in a job role that uses those technical skills. So if you're trained to as a mechanic, then you naturally will do the work of a mechanic naturally. Now, there's also the other part, which is what we call transferable skills or soft skills. Now, these are skills that we have that we can transfer from one job to another job. And this job can be both paid or unpaid job roles. And these same skills can be transferred from one industry to another industry should you shift. For example, skills like communication skills like your analytical skills, skills like your leadership skills. Now, these are what we call transferable skills. So it's also important for us to have an exploration to know what are your transferable skills so that when you do move into different spaces, together with your understanding and knowledge of your technical skills, you put together the technical and transferable skills. You put all this together with your values, with your interests, with your personality. Now you have a clear picture of your career attributes. Now, going back to what I mentioned earlier about career attributes, if I may just bring back to the first slide that I have. This slide, career attributes. So this is at the very beginning of your journey towards enabling yourself to go into your dream career. Once you know what your VIPS is, this is the very first step that you will take. And if I may bring back to the other screen that I have, this particular image here. So just to recap, that once the very first step to choosing a career is to assess yourself and to find out what your VIPS is. And now that you know what your VIPS is, of course, have a conversation with a career coach, with a career counselor, to list some of these occupations that you would like to explore and to see whether these occupations are they all aligned to your VIPS. And if you're not sure, then you embark on a information interview with individuals in those spaces that you may be interested to go into, and to determine if what you are hearing from these individuals is this information you're getting, is it aligned to your VIPS? Then you decide, you make your career choice. Whether do I want to go to the space or not, or go to another space, because that other space is much more aligned to your VIPS. Now, of course, long-term, identify your goals. What is it that you want to be doing? What is your mission statement? Like, for example, I mentioned my mission statement is to enable individuals to reach their potential. So, which means to say, now I know what my goals and my mission is. Anything that I do, whether it's in my paid role or in my unpaid role, the things that I do will be drawn, or rather have this goal of helping these individuals that I come in contact with to be able to reach their potential. And finally, writing a career action plan. This is sort of like a strategy thing where I would know, write it somewhere, because when we don't write it down, we don't remember. So once you write down what your career plan is, you write down what your goal is, your mission is, what your values, your interests, your personality is, you have a clear idea of how to proceed. So this really is, to me, the crux of what the VIPS is all about, and knowing how to choose your dream career. So at this point, I'll just open for any. I'll stop sharing. So I'll just open for any possible questions that people may have at this point of time. Okay, are there any possible questions that may come up? So let me also check the team side. Okay, so there is a question that comes up. So is it normal to have more than one dream career over our lifespan? Now, if you go back to this whole idea of your career journey, that generally what happens is that once you're clear on the certain direction that you have, you will be moving generally in the direction that gives you a sense of satisfaction. But what can happen? The question is, does this goal shift over time? The answer is possibly. Because what may happen is, especially if you're younger, maybe you're in your 20s and 30s, and if you've gone through this entire career exploration process and you are clear what is it that gives you a sense of fulfillment and a sense of purpose, you're headed down one direction, doing paid jobs that's aligned to your goal, maybe doing some volunteer work that's aligned to your goal. Maybe when we're in our 40s, maybe perhaps in our early 50s, when things change because of our life stage, perhaps that goal may shift to do something else. So your goal and in other words, then your career direction is now slowly shifting away from what you previously like to do. So that simply means that now we need to do another evaluation of your VIPS to know what is it that gives you a sense of fulfillment, and then create perhaps a new direction, a new mission, a new vision for yourself, and then do a reorientation of the roles and the jobs, inverted commas, both paid and unpaid, the jobs that you would like to be engaged in, that now will give you a sense of purpose and a sense of direction. So that is what I would say in terms of changing directions in terms of career. But if going back to this, the thought is, just want to clarify, remember that the jobs that we do is only a job, but that job is actually a part of the bigger picture. So sometimes some of us may engage in different job roles in maybe within 10, 20 years. Sometimes because people don't know what their ultimate career goals are, they are drifting from one job role to another in an attempt to find what gives them meaning. Now, many of us go through that process. But imagine if you know what your ultimate goal is, what gives you purpose, what gives you meaning, then it's easier to look for a job role that is aligned to that particular VIPS rather than drifting around trying to find one job that doesn't, or this doesn't fit, I'll go to another job, or that doesn't fit, etc., etc. So the critical point for all of us to note is know what your goal is, your career goal, using your VIPS and all these other elements I've just talked about. So there's another question that came up is any tips for someone who wants to upskill on a budget, or is it just time poor? Well, I would say that there are quite a few options available for us right now here in Australia and even on international websites. Now, if we are on a budget to upskill, now of course they perhaps look for certain organizations that may give us maybe a reduced fee in terms of training, Or there are some companies that has able to tap into some government funding that allows us to perhaps go into a particular training that gives us maybe at reduced cost or something like that. Now, that is one possible option. Another possible option is perhaps to go into some of these so-called free training websites. I know that there are a couple of universities that do produce, do make available some of this training for free. Of course, you don't get a certification, of course, naturally. But if you do want a certification at the end of training, perhaps you just pay a small fee and you get a certification and the so-called bit of the paper to prove that you have completed the training. So I think that is one possibility. Go to Google. Like for example, we have websites like I'm just thinking of that website just at the tip of my tongue. It is a website that has all these training options available. But right now, just off the top of my head, I can't remember. The goal right now, I think for us, if you're looking for free training, is to just go to Google and search for free or low cost training sites or opportunities. Yeah. So that is one way to be looking at. So there's a comment that I had to do many jobs, meet different people to realize what I really wanted to do and what gives me a sense of purpose, happiness, and fulfillment. So thank you for the comment. It's true that for those of us who never had the opportunity to receive careers counseling, careers coaching, we spend an inordinate amount of time just figuring out what really gives us a sense of purpose. So sometimes people take 10 years, 15 years, even 20 years. And I remember working with a client who was in a sort of oil and gas industry that was back in Asia many years ago, and he was sort of retrenched from his role because the company sort of downsized, and of course the oil and gas industry at the time collapsed as well in 2015, 2016. So that was his only job. And to him, that was the only thing that gives him a purpose and meaning. But after the careers exploration, and we spent about a couple of sessions together, and we began to explore that there were other things in his life that gave him a sense of meaning and purpose. And one of those things was actually he loved baking. He loved making cookies. He loved making biscuits. He loved baking cakes, all kinds of confections that he really enjoyed that. And in fact, he was so really great at it that all his mates, his family members, his partner really loved it. They always begged, "Oh, could you please bake more of those cookies or those cakes for us?" Really loved it. But for him, he always saw that just only as a hobby. But now that at the point when he was made redundant of his role, of course he had some compensation behind that. So for him, he wasn't in want of money at the point. So what he was looking for was something to give him a sense of meaning. So after exploration and after some time, of course, there was a lot of resistance initially from this client, but overall, after some time, he began to realize, what if I just engage in this particular hobby, but to make it more like a role, a job role, a paid role? So what he did was he joined a bakery, and he was actually recruited on initially a part-time basis to do some baking, and he did such a great job that eventually he was offered a permanent role in that particular place. And right now, of course, at a point he was happily baking the cakes, the cookies, and all that. I remember having a conversation with him many months later. The first thing he said to me, "No, Tim, I'm back in oil and gas." So I was wondering, you went back to the industry, the oil and gas industries? Yeah, I'm in the oil and gas in the kitchen. There's oil and there's gas, and I'm cooking. So, oh, okay. So it was sort of like a hilarious thing. But the point I'm trying to say to all of us is this: that sometimes for individuals who never had an opportunity to go through careers counseling, it may take them a long time to figure it out what is that gives them meaning and purpose. But for all of you who are listening in, my encouragement to you is really take the time, if you can, to reach out to a careers counselor or careers coach and to embark on this exploration and to start the process of figuring it out. What is it that will give you a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose? And it's never too late to pivot, to go into an area that gives you purpose and meaning. Okay, so there's another question. Do we have any tips on how to spot a toxic workplace or an environment? Okay, now this is a little bit different from dream career. I would say that in a toxic environment generally, again, this is just off the top of my head, important thing to take note of is, are you, firstly, sometimes we enjoy the work, but it could be the colleagues, it could be the culture, it could be the boss. It could be many, many different factors. But I would think one of the factors of spotting a toxic workplace or environment, number one, is that you find, again, this is just off the top of my head, you find that the things that you do, you are never appreciated for that. That's number one. Or two, credit is always stolen from you by other people. That's possible. Possible angle. Another possible thing to take note of is maybe you find that there's the level of trust in the environment is very low, and people are always being blamed for small little mistakes that is made. So there's no trust. There's a lot of blaming, a blaming culture. Or you can also find that the organization or the company or even the department that the individual's in is operating at such a pace or a way that individuals really have to, they're no longer a personality. I mean, who they are as an individual is suppressed, and they're sort of like just a task. They're just doing something, and there is no engagement, there is no sense of community, there's no sense of connection with the colleagues. You're just doing a piece of work. I mean, yeah, there are some environments like that. So of course, these what I'm just mentioning, of course, there are just tip of the iceberg. But I would say that at the end of the day, if you find yourself always drained emotionally, physically, intellectually, even spiritually, then you probably might be in an environment where it's fairly toxic. So in cases like this, perhaps having again a conversation with the career coach might be useful as well. So I think these are some things that I could possibly share with us. Of course, we can have another session in the future that focuses on this. But at this point, I just want to bring us back into our topic of dream careers. That it's important for us just to know that in order for us, of course, in this case, if you find yourself in an environment, maybe it's time to look for something else that is more aligned to your VIPS and your career attributes. All right. Okay, so I know the time has just gone by so quickly. It's been 40 minutes, and it's about time for me to also wrap up. So I thank all of you who have dialed in today and to be listening to this talk about how do you plan and how do you prepare for your dream career. So again, just as I conclude, I just want to encourage all of you to take the time over this week perhaps just to consider what is your values, your interests, your personality, and your skills. And there are some assessment tools out there you can actually do for free. So again, go back to Google, our best friend, and type in free career assessment tools. And based on what you find, go ahead and do the exploration and to find out what are your values, what is your interest, what is your personality, and what kind of transferable skills you have. And once you have the overall picture of what is your career attributes, then you can start the process of planning for your dream career. So thank you everyone for being here with me. And as we sign off, I wish all of you a very good week ahead and continue wish all of you all the success in your career journey and to always enjoy and find fulfillment in the things that you do. So good night, good afternoon, and farewell, everyone.